Hello, everybody. Welcome to Student Spotlight, a web series where we ask students about their experiences at UWM and abroad. Today, I am hosting Timmis Maddox. Timmis is a PhD student in anthropology, president of the Anthropology Student Union, and a skilled archaeologist. Timmis has been quite successful in his graduate career. He has received numerous awards, including the Chancellor's Award, SALT Tax Scholarship, and the Advanced Opportunity Program Fellowship. He is currently working on his dissertation, Modern Problems Require Ancient Solutions, a longitudinal study of environmental and cultural sustainability. In this episode, I asked Timmis about his experiences at UWM, why he chose UWM, and what challenges he needed to overcome while obtaining his PhD. We discussed his dissertation research and the many projects he has worked on in Europe over the past few years. Timmis, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
Timmis, what inspired you to get your PhD in anthropology? And why did you choose UWM?
Well, I think that's a deep question. So to answer that question, I got to start after my master's in Durham. After that, I spent at least 4 years doing cultural resource management as a contract archaeologist. And I really, my focus was for those few years kind of just working, getting money. And, my PhD had always been in the back of my mind. It had always been kind of an end goal because I wanted to be an academic. But when I also wanted to try and see, what other opportunities were out there. And that's why I started working out in the workforce. But the more I worked out there, the more time I spent out in the kind of the commercial sphere, the more I realized that I wasn't going to get paid as much as I should have without a PhD. Unfortunately, the master's degree is becoming more of what it has the same value as kind of what a bachelor's degree had like 30 years ago. It's more or less expected of you to have a master's degree if you want to get anywhere. But if you want to really get into a high level position or have a higher salary, you really need to go for a PhD. And then when it came to why I came to UWM, that it ultimately came down to not only the expertise of the people I'd be working with, but also the money I was being offered. I spent maybe 3 or 4 while I was working those 4 years. I spent about 3 of them applying to different PhD programs and seeing what options were available to me. And I first started. I spent 1 year at SUNY Buffalo in New York, which unfortunately during my time there, things kind of fell apart for that department. But University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee had always kind of been on my radar for a while because of the fact that Bettina Arnold works here and she's my supervisor and she's pretty well respected in Europe, especially in kind of my area of Europe, in northwestern Europe. She's very knowledgeable about archaeology, especially with landscapes and different kind of niche topics with landscapes such as gender, mortuary archaeology, identity. And I thought she would be a very excellent person for me to work under and to kind of give me guidance, which kind of worked out for both of us because by the time I kind of reached out to her after Buffalo, she was talking about retiring and I was I was at a level of my studies that I didn't really need that much guidance. I just need to kind of have a platform for me to do my research and just be pointed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, I came to UWM where they offered to pay for mostly everything, which was, absolutely green flags all around for that. But then also, it just kind of gave me a good place to sit down, do my research, and really kind of become my own academic. One of the best advice that I was ever given when I was really applying to PhD programs in graduate school is that, you should be looking for a good department, but don't really rely on the fact that that someone will be there who knows exactly what you're doing or knows exactly how to do it. More, it's that you should be looking for someone who understands your methodology. And even if you're the only person, like for me, for instance, who studies Scandinavian archaeology in UWM, that gives you an opportunity to become that university's person for that. so that to create your own little niche, I guess. So that's kind of like that's the way I looked at it, especially with Bettina. She's someone who at least understood the theory and the methodology enough for me to be able to go there. Okay, like that she can provide me the scaffolding necessary to really go out there and blossom as a researcher.
So what have been some of your favorite parts about going to UWM? You mentioned Bettina, or is there anything else?
Well, I feel like over the past 2 years, I really haven't gotten the opportunity to see as much of UWM as I had wanted to because of COVID.
Yeah.
When my first year here in 2021, 2020 to 2021, everything was pretty much online. So, it was me trapped in my apartment. But aside from that, I really liked working with the ASU. I've liked kind of being able to go on campus and try out the library and stuff like that. I think UWM has a lot to offer, and as time progresses and we slowly, hopefully, get out of this COVID environment, I'll get to be able to experience more of that. But as far as I have seen so far, the department is a really big bright spot in my life at UWM. It's gotten me into hobbies like brewing and stuff like that. So I
Oh,
think
you're
there's
true Milwaukeean now.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a really tight knit community. I think
Hmm.
unlike other schools I've been to where I felt that the department was a very kind of toxic environment where there's a lot of competition, feuding between people, students forced to feel like they're competing against their peers. UWM provides a really hospitable environment where you feel like you're kind of more of a part of a family rather than some I don't know a tournament between each other.
So you mentioned COVID. What are some of the other big struggles that you've had during grad school, and what advice do you have for future and current students?
Well, COVID was definitely, the big one. Simply and all the things that came along with that, the isolation. And if there was another thing, it'd be the weather here. The weather here sucks, 90% of the time, and then you have 10% of the time you had like those 3 or 4 weeks of summer that are pretty
Mhm.
pretty nice.
Yep.
But I think it's a lot of things that naturally come with grad school. I think it's about learning to pace yourself, learning not to feel guilty if you feel like like right now, I'm sure everyone, not just me, is feeling extremely burnout right now, and because of that, there's this whole thing about whether or not you feel like you're doing the amount of work you should be doing.
Yes.
But it's all this mindset that we've been raised with, about being 100% efficiency, which it's really not how you're supposed to be. So I think a lot of it has been learning about being easy on yourself and caring for yourself as much as you care for your work. So, I think the two big struggles have been, the isolation, but also learning to be good to yourself, especially when you're in kind of this a rigorous work environment like this.
So tell us about your dissertation research. What are some of the biggest questions you're trying to answer in it?
So I work on an island in Denmark called Bornholm. It's a small island in the Baltic Sea that's between Sweden and Denmark. And I study one of the first cities in Scandinavia. It was pre-Viking, so it's about from 80 to about 800, 900. Uh, and the big questions that I'm trying to learn from there is, so what can we learn by studying this ancient city? What can we learn about, keeping cities now sustainable uh, through development and growth? One of the big things about this island is that this city was occupied for over 1,000 years. It grew really quickly, and it was like occupied continuously over that period. But at the same time, cities on that island now are growing pretty quickly as a result of a lot of economic initiatives on that island. So my big question is that what can we learn from this city that was kind of in the same environment, while it probably had different problems, and obviously it didn't have any the modern day problems that we have now. Um, what can we learn about the relationship between that city and the environment of the island, and how can we use that knowledge to help cities on the island now stay sustainable as they grow.
Hmm.
I'd like to use it as a case study to really show the potential of archaeology to be applicable to modern day problems. Um, because there's a really big movement in archaeology right now called the environmental humanities, where a lot of uh, kind of social sciences are really trying to see how they can be used to apply to problems with the environment, such as climate change, environmental degradation, and different stuff like that. It's really, I'm using paleoethnobotany, such as pollen and the study of macrofossils from soil samples. I'm also using aerial thermography to look under the earth and see how people modified the earth over time. It's a really big project, and as you said, I got the Advanced Opportunity Program Fellowship as a way of funding that for the next 3 years. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah,
Uh, but the next,
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. But really, the next few steps are to kind of like continue to get money, but also I'm going back in about 2 weeks to go and do my research in Denmark.
So the people that you're studying, are they considered Celts then, or do they have their own kind of name, or?
They don't really. I consider them Germanic. You
Uh-huh.
know, they are. It's hard. You can't really say Celt in this area. You can say Germanic, but at the same time, I feel like that area is so far north compared to what we usually think as Germanic to really put any kind of overarching label on them.
Hmm.
Uh, what I like to say is they're Iron Age pre-Viking. You know, a lot of the things that we see during the Viking period really kind of developed during this time. Um, especially ideology, organization, technology, stuff like that. So we really see this part as kind of this point as a developmental period where we start to see, the people that go from being like these Germanic communities to what we see in the Viking Age.
Hmm. Are you working on this project with another university? Is it part of a field school? Can other students join on if they're interested?
Yeah. My project, I've been working on it for about 4 years now, 3 or 4 years now. And I'm partnered with the Bornholm's Museum on the island. And we've developed a working relationship through kind of negotiation and meeting with people with the University of Lund in Sweden, the University of Aarhus in Denmark, and then Gdansk University in Poland. Uh, it's a really big kind of like international effort to study this site because it was a really big part of the Baltic region for a long time.
Mhm.
uh, I do teach field schools while I'm there during the summer. Field schools are a big way of which we fund the dig.
Mhm.
So every year there's either for a month or 2 months there's a field school that goes on through the IFR. It's the International Field Research Foundation, I think,
Okay.
where you have to pay and they come through and the museum houses you and then we teach you about excavation and the specific cultures that you'll be interacting with in that area.
Is this
So
mostly
yeah,
for undergrads or graduate students too?
both. There's both, and then you also have the opportunity to volunteer as well. If people ever want to volunteer but don't really feel like having to pay for a field school like that, um, they're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can put them in touch with the museum, and we can discuss something. Usually, what that entails is that you'd have to pay for your own plane ticket and have like a budget for food, but usually most of the time, the museum would find housing for you, and
Mhm.
you would be able to partake in the entire excavation.
So in your time excavating there, what are some of your favorite finds?
Well, I like to. There's a lot of cool stuff that I found there. We find gold all the time because it was such a powerful ceremonial kingly site. We find we have over 3,000 finds of sheet gold that was pressed into little images because it was used as a way, as a form of religious currency on the site, which is really
Wow.
cool. We found spears, swords, uh, pieces of helmets. Last year we found a temple, the structure, which we are going to be working on more this year. But we find amber, glass beads that were made from Roman glass. We find just things all the time, and every year the site continues to surprise us.
How big is the site?
Uh, it's a complex, so it's about 200 hectares, but it's made in kind of like it's shaped like islands, because the environment back then was very watery. There was a lot of water in the environment, so everything was built on the high ground.
Okay.
So
Are
the
they
site that
fortified too?
we think so. Whether or not it was like actually defensively fortified or if it was like a ceremonial type thing, is to be questioned. But we found earthworks throughout the area. It's kind of like one of the Oppida in Britain, where these kind of like these very big sites with earthworks placed around them or through them. There's about 24 sites which make up the complex, and the only one that's really kind of been really excavated right now is the central one, which is where all these really important finds are being made. But it's my hope that with the museum to kind of really expand excavation and investigation into the other sites of the complex.
Are there burial sites as well, and what are they like?
We have not found any bodies yet. Which is really kind of the question of the age for right now, because we have such an important site, and we know that from at least from the housing sizes and stuff like that, that at one point it would have housed up to 1,000 people, but we don't know where the bodies are. And I think that's really a question of pushing out into these other satellite sites, and finding them. Uh, Concerning what the burials could be like from back then, burial traditions in Scandinavia were very varied based on the region you were in. It could be inhumations to cremations. So it's really anybody's guess at this point. But we know, from similar sites like this throughout Scandinavia, that there will be specific areas where these people will be buried. Most likely, there's a similar site in other parts of Denmark where, you found thousands of burials with elite goods such as like silver and gold and glass. So I think it's really a matter of just trying to go out and find them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds really interesting. So what's next? Like, what would be your dream job after you graduate?
I mean, just having a job, I think that would be a really nice thing, but it's kind of up in the air. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said like academic, being professor, teacher somewhere. But from my personal experience with friends who had finished their PhDs and then took like 2 years for them doing retail before they finally got an academic job, I know that it's competitive, and it's a very, the job market isn't as open as it used to be. So I'm really kind of keeping my options open. I'm more than willing to go back into CRM, as long as it's kind of like the higher up position. Also willing to go into any university, keep, museum environment. I'm keeping myself really flexible as to, like what to expect when I get
Right.
out of PhD.
Would you would you consider moving to Europe and working there full time?
I would like to, that's kind of like the dream scenario. That's really kind of like if everything worked out, that's what I would like to happen. If I get enough grants, I would like to kind of at least go spend a year there doing research full time
Uh-huh.
to go and just kind of focus on my stuff. But that really depends on the money I'm able to achieve. Aside from that, I'm also doing a GIS certificate here at UWM, which has kind of made me kind of really skilled in GIS, but also exposed me to urban planning, stuff like that, and different skills that kind of make me more, like you said, flexible.
Yeah.
So I like to think that I'm just kind of opening myself up to a wider range of careers in
Yeah.
case, like once I get out, I'm not really quite sure where to go yet. So, right now when I think about it, the thing is I'm not thinking about it right now because I know there's really no point in worrying about it right now. I know I have at least 2 to 3 more years before I have to like really start considering that. And you know, my policy is why stress about it if you can't do anything about it right now.
Right. Right. That's a good strategy to have. Since you are the current and outgoing president of the Anthropology Student Union, could you just give us a little bit of an introduction to what that is and what it
Yeah.
provides for students?
So the Anthropology Student Union is a organization founded by and run by students of the anthropology department and the museum studies department in UWM, and it's an organization that's meant to be there to provide students with the support and the skills necessary to develop their professional careers while they're in graduate school or in their undergrad. It's for everybody, but it also provides a social community for people to have the support necessary to get through school without feeling like, like you said, isolated or anything like that. Um, we didn't really have that much of a presence last year simply because of COVID, which is understandable. But also at the same time, really what I focused on this year was bringing back the ASU as a professional organization. I know people have asked, oh, we would like to have like some social events. And while we have tried to do that, it was a little bit limited with what we could do because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really going to be a goal for the administration coming up next year to kind of really wine what we offer. But for right now, what we did throughout the year was provide workshops through our professionalization series. We had a publication workshop. We had grad to undergrad outreach regarding applying to grad school and what to expect. We also had all of these several different kind of like information sessions where you got to sit down and learn more about how to become more of a professional academic or a professional anthropologist and what resources are available for you. And and the kind of the crowning thing that we did this year was the annual colloquium, which is a annual kind of research conference where the students get to come and present their research, their topic. It doesn't really matter if it's like a thesis that you're working on or just a paper that you really liked. We had students from all throughout the UW system in Wisconsin come and present. And in the end, we had, like 6 or 7 hours of presentations going. And then we had a very nice reception in the student union where we had a buffet, but also, a cash bar going and a keynote speech by Dr. Malaby. And in the end, everybody who presented is going to be published in a special issue published by Field Notes.
I think that's just amazing, and it's so nice to see that ASU has been doing all these activities for the students. I know that that is just critical information that you sometimes don't get in the classroom.
Yeah.
And to have that extra help, that extra motivation to present a paper or to get published is really one of the best things about ASU and UWM, in my opinion, is that we really are trying to lift each other up,
Absolutely.
and try and meet you wherever you're at. And it's always just kind of a welcoming place for people to learn. And I think that's the most important thing for any kind of academic environment, is that you should feel comfortable not knowing, and you should also feel confident that you will learn.
Absolutely. And I think that's really something that's really allowed UWM to keep its R1 status over the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, simply because it's not an environment where students are forced to compete against each other, or at least feel like they have to compete against each other. They're supported at every turn. They're placed in an environment which allows them to flourish and thrive. And I think the results show simply through the projects that UWM produces, especially, speaking from my experience in the anthropology department.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Timmis. It's been great talking to you, and it's It's always nice to get a student's perspective on things, especially mid-program, which, can
Yeah,
go either way sometimes, So
yeah,
thank you again, and
my
I
pleasure.
hope you have a great summer and continue doing all the great work that you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Pete. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Well,
Okay.
that's it for Student Spotlight. We'll see you next time.